Welcome to Women's Wars, a podcast series from Birn. I am Georgina Bame. For this series, I have interviewed 10 extraordinary women from countries that emerged from the former Yugoslavia. They are activists and journalists who were inspired by the wars of the 90s to take action to support the survivors and advocate for human rights. By telling their stories, these courageous women show how wars continue to have an impact on ordinary people decades after they were fought. In this episode of Women's Wars, Katarina Kruhonja from Croatia tells how she swapped a hospital ward for peace work. Katarina Kruhonja was so deeply affected by the war in Croatia that she quit her job as a doctor in the city of Osijek to become a full-time human rights activist.
I was head of one diagnostic department, and a war and this experience of violence, which in front of my eyes was really burning like a fire, that stressed me quite a lot, and that's changed my life. Yeah.
That's how she got involved in peace activism in the middle of a war. But her choice was not well received by the rest of the population under siege.
Doing parallel my job as a medical doctor and activist, it was very challenging. One reason was that in the middle of the war, when we started, it was perception on our work. We established a Center for Peace, Nonviolence and Human Rights in the middle of the town, which was under attack of Serbian forces. So it was perceived as something very strange, inappropriate, and even that we are enemies, traitors. I realized that there are quite a lot of good doctors, but there are not a lot of people willing to do on the peace in the middle of the war or in the early post-war situation, and that actually I am missing or failing in my basic job as a medical doctor because my thoughts were always on a peace work.
The turning point came in 1997 when the region where she lives came back under Croatian control after being held by rebel Serbs in the war. Kruhonja left her job to become a full-time activist and, as she explained, began running the Center for Peace, Nonviolence and Human Rights in Osijek. She focused on working with Croatian and Serb women in reconciliation efforts, despite the situation on the ground still being very tense. After a conflict that was so clearly ethnically divided, there were many obstacles to foster a culture of peace and reconciliation. Her goal was to make it possible for Croats and Serbs to live together again, but it was far from being easy. Is there a particular story that stayed with you personally, something that you personally witnessed that you cannot forget, or that it inspired you to continue even more during your field work, for example?
If you would like to have one concrete example of working with people in the field, so I will share one about working with a group of women displaced from the area under control of Serbs, mostly Croats. And the group of women inside the area under control of UN and Serbian control, mostly Serbian women. So we work with Croatian women, and our goal was to prepare them to go back in their villages or places on a peaceful way, and how to face the situation in the spot when they came there, and how can they be and ambassador of peace there. And Croatians, they said, we can't imagine even to listen Serbian language, because during the war it was complete segregation. So even to hear Serbian speech, it was immediately connected with aggression, suffering, war crimes. And then what we do, they read a text from one book on Cyrillic and Serbian language, each of them, so that they can even face these. For them, it was a fear of trauma, how we will deal in this situation. They had an instinct for vomiting that is really on the level of psycho-organic distress, how they felt in that time. And Serbian women, they said they didn't have opportunity to talk even to each other because of Serbian paramilitary forces put them in a fear to be in their houses, not to meet to each other. So they have a fear even to talk. So we exercise with them just speaking. So can you imagine, or is that clear illustration of situation?
It is a perfect example of how traumatized people were.
Yeah.
Because this is very basic stuff, especially coming after former Yugoslavia, where people were living together amongst communities just before and right after. They couldn't even bear to speak to each other.
Yeah.
It is a very powerful example. And how does it look now, 3 decades later? Do you think that there has been successful reconciliation, or do you think that there is still a lot of work to be done for justice and for reconciliation?
There is still a lot of work to be done. What is fact, unfortunately, that still we in Croatia, and I would say that it is not just in Croatia, that dominant narratives still remain ethnocentric, and they are very tied to the ethno-nationalistic agendas of political elites.
Today, 3 decades later, Kruhonja continues to be involved in peace activism through the Center for Peace, Nonviolence and Human Rights. She says that division in society still exists and their job is not over.
We in Croatia have still this mythologization of homeland war, and that is not good for inclusive memories and inclusive history. And we have a problem with revision of the history regarding Second World War. So there are a lot of problems.
Thank you for listening. You can find more installments of our Women's War series in our website, balkaninsight.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.